think a good time to start?
Yeah, maybe you can introduce yourself since Dr. White is now.
She's coming. She's right there.
She's coming. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know who. Right.
Okay.
Seems ready.
Well, so can geeks do good? You know, we see people go off and teach for America. We see them join the Peace Corps. And we are thrilled to have Code for America as a way that geeks can do good. So Nick has been working with Macon and Code for America for the last lots of months. It seems like forever. Yeah, I mean, he's changing our maps already for the town. So, and he's going to tell us about what he's done in that time.
All right, thank you. I'm Nick Doran. I work with Code for America. We're a nonprofit based in San Francisco and working this year with 8 cities across the country. Next year, 9 cities. And each Code for America fellow joins the program for a year. So this year I've been assigned to Macon, partnering with City Hall and neighborhood groups to figure out how we can use existing open source technology, write new open source programs, and then also release data to the public. And so this is actually my last trip to Macon as a Code for America fellow. I just said goodbye to the people in City Hall like a couple hours ago, so it's a tender moment for me. So this is like when Macon just proposed their app a year ago. This is all that we got. And to summarize it, they said Macon needs more technology in government. How can Code for America help? They didn't have a specific project like some cities. They just said, please go to work on this. And I think when people are imagining government technology, they're thinking about just getting all that data that they have in government and explaining it. So here's one way of looking at it, government explaining SPLOST. So this is a project which is very close to launching. This is the SPLOST website for the city of Macon, and we'll also be including good county projects. And it just breaks down where all that sales tax money is going for the city. But this is just another way for cities to broadcast themselves. What about ways for people in government and people in and also for citizens themselves to express themselves through technology, to change the way we think about government? And one of the best examples out there is Honolulu Answers. I know we're not in Honolulu. It'd be nice if we all could fly out there. But Honolulu Answers is a unique project in that it's changing this. You saw on the last page there are a lot of links that we put out there. In this, there's just one search box. It's focusing on you, the citizen, saying what do you want to search for? And the best part about this is where the answers come from. So I'm going to play a video that came from NBC. And in this video is one of the main speakers is Sheba Najmi, who's on Skype right now. So we're going to watch the video, and then I'll bring Sheba in if you have any questions about this project, and then we'll move on to like how we brought this kind of project to Macon. So.
Thank you, and may God bless the United States of America.
While America focuses on the election, volunteers in Hawaii are making a much quieter contribution to democracy. They're building a better website for the city and the citizens of Honolulu.
So basically the idea is quick and simple, easy language. Every page on the site is actually a page that you might go to if you do a Google search.
Sheba is a fellow with Code for America, a nonprofit that develops software to promote greater participation in government. She gave up a high-paying job at Yahoo to do this for a year. Now, her team is working with Honolulu City Hall to launch a website called Honolulu Answers. They're taking an age-old problem, hard-to-use government websites, and rewriting to make it simple to use.
Because the site is supposed to be citizen-focused, we're getting citizens together to come up with answers to their most frequently asked questions.
I know the answer to this one.
Honolulu didn't tell Code for America what to do. They just invited the fellows in, opened up the city's data, and let them look for ways to make improvements or build apps. One developer noticed how bad Honolulu's traffic is, so he built a site that connects the city's highway cameras. we've created Route View, which as you enter that route, it also shows you the cameras in order along that route. And then you can drag the line to make alterations and see the cameras along that new route. There are 8 cities participating in Code for America, and they like to share. The team in Philadelphia built a text-to-vote tool so popular, other cities asked if they could use it too.
Because it's open source, anybody right now
this is
could
my
just
boss,
go to
Jen
github.com/code4america and download any of our applications and install them in their city. You could be in Buenos Aires, you could be in Beijing, and you could do that.
Jen Palka founded Code for America 2 years ago. She wants to fundamentally change how we participate in government.
Back in the day, you would have a volunteer fire brigade. Well, what's the digital equivalent of that? Aren't people still willing to help out if it makes their community better?
Code for America has their own take on volunteer brigades. To make sure that their work isn't forgotten when they leave, the fellows train a team of locals to sustain the projects.
First, let me show you guys where we keep our mailing list of 170 people that we know in Honolulu.
But this is where Code for America's good government mission comes up against the hard facts of politics. Honolulu's mayor lost a recent primary battle, and it's an open question whether the city will still support the apps after a new mayor is sworn in. The next administration could close off the data, or just let the software die on the vine.
You know, obviously I don't have any control if the mayor says, we're shutting this thing down, but I have enough confidence that the brigade will, even if the mayor shuts it down, the new mayor, for example, the brigade will carry it on. It's open source.
And the software will be available for other cities to use. But Jen Palka wants to build more than just software.
And it's not just about government changing. It's also about we, the people, changing. It's about people in the technology world coming out of this program as lifelong advocates for government that works.
For NBCNews.com, I'm Matt Rivera.
So the way that the answers are written is actually participatory. Those people you saw at that event actually would choose answers they knew about. So they were actually fire chiefs, national park rangers, everyday citizens helping to answer the questions that they knew answers to. And then ones that they didn't know are then forwarded on to departments. So the site actually is not written by Code for America or the city of Honolulu. It's actually a large-scale collaboration. So that's kind of, let's see if I can get you on here. So she can't hear us through the microphone, so if you have questions, I'll type them.
So hopefully you guys can hear me, even though I can't hear you. But if you watch the video, I'll give you a little bit of a quick background of Honolulu Answers, and then explain the write-a-thon a little bit more. So Honolulu Answers is a citizen-focused website that we created. I don't know if Nick, you can pull it up and show it, but it's basically a simple, fast, easy way to access city information and services. And it centers around search. And each page on the site is an answer to a specific question that a citizen might have, which is it's written in friendly, simple language, as though you're asking your neighbor a question. So unlike most government websites, it's not a portal destination, but each page is a specific destination in itself. We had a great partnership with the city, so to start, we initially dug into Google Analytics to see, what the top things were that people were coming to the site for, and we, based on those, we figured out what the top questions were that citizens had. So Honolulu Answers is not only driven by citizen questions, it's also driven by citizen-focused writing. And we wanted the site to be citizen-focused, and we thought, well, what better way to deliver that than to involve citizens in actually writing the content? So, we wrote the initial maybe 20 questions on the site, And then to fill in the rest of the site, we brought in the community to answer their own questions. And at 8:45 a.m. on a Saturday in Honolulu, in a co-working space, nearly 60 people showed up of all ages and from all walks of life. And we had advertised this as sort of this write-a-thon, a civic write-a-thon, something that had never been done before, as far as we knew. We weren't really sure what to expect, whether or not anybody would show up. And so we were pretty amazed to see 60 people come so early on a Saturday. And we'd asked each of the city's departments what their top questions were that they received from citizens. And we put them up with little slips of paper so that people could select from those questions and also write their own, which many of them did. And that was a great way to gather real people's questions for Honoluluenses. So if you're looking at the screen, I think Nick is showing the question about wild roosters, which is actually a very real problem on Oahu, the island that Honolulu is on. So, we gave them tools like templates and input forms, and folks researched the answers to the questions on the city's website. And then, of the 60 people who came, 14 of them were city staff members who gave up their precious Saturday to come unpaid to just help lend their expertise and collaborate with citizens so that they could figure out the answers together. And in the process of doing this, they too understood better how citizens think of city information, which is not the way the city is internally organized, but from a citizen's perspective. And the community, so this is in answer to Nick's question. Yes, this was something that brought the government, city government, and citizens together. And it was the reason the city staff came were just because of our personal relationships with them, and I asked them if they would come. And it was wonderful. I think that they learned a lot too. There was lots of warmth and laughter, very positive collaboration. The community was so excited about it that a food truck that was outside donated 5 dozen cupcakes. And it was so incredible that in just 2.5 hours of writing time, 120 answers were written to questions. And if the Rooster article is still up, you can see that as we review and post the articles on Honolulu Answers, we attribute them to the citizen authors on the bottom right. It was actually very inspiring to see the passionate energy with which everyone came together to participate, to see collaboration amongst groups of people who don't usually have the opportunity for it, like city staff from different departments, who don't even get to collaborate between departments with each other. And then the co-working space itself, which was a different kind of environment, and residents, it's in a very supportive environment. It felt like a very big step forward.
All right, do people have questions?
How did you follow up on questions that you couldn't answer that morning? Was there a follow-up process? Who was...
Yeah, so actually what was interesting is, so I think the question is, if you weren't able to answer it then, how, at the write-a-thon, how did you find an answer? So after the write-a-thon, okay. So it was interesting because as the write-a-thon came to a close, a lot of people wanted to take more questions home for homework, and they wanted to know when we would do this again, because they had such a great time being a part of rewriting their government. So we kept the forms up, when people were entering their answers via a Google form. So the forms were up, and some people continued to answer questions over the next couple of days. It was all an experiment. There were no prizes being offered, so we didn't know if anyone would show up. So it was really heartwarming to see the passion that people have to be a part of making their cities better. But I think, above all, it showed what's possible when you truly place a focus on the citizen, and you create a citizen-centric website, and then you bring in the community to actually, be the capacity. The community actually helps you fill out the website.
Is there one more question, and then we'll...
Great, thanks everyone.
Okay. Well, if anyone has another question...
Is that the last question, Nick?
Okay.
Oh, what time is it?
Where is she now?
She's in San Francisco right now.
Oh, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
It's early in the morning. It's a little after 7 a.m.
Okay, aloha.
All right.
Aloha is also
Okay,
bye,
thanks
right?
everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, let me get out of that. All right, that was, I didn't know how that was going to work out. Okay, so mostly streamed work. So how can we bring this kind of like community activism, government exchange sort of idea to Macon, Georgia? And so we actually have launched several projects. This is a project which I think some of you may have seen before. I'm going to try to make this mostly all new stuff. That's why I'm trying to bring in like ideas from Honolulu, also some like brand new projects. But this is a project I showed before, but it's now an official like site, homestatus.org. And we're going to put it on the city's website as well, homestatus.org. But basically what you do is every time the city's code enforcement team, which looks for housing violations like dilapidated houses, houses that need to get demolished, or just they're inspecting someone's yard, they make a record. And so we've uploaded and mapped all these here. So an example I use is Adams Ave, and when you search for that, where are my maps?
Still loading.
Oh, there they are. Are they more visible on this? Okay. On the monitor, they're washed out. So here you can see on that road every case, and in the tiles that we're using, you can actually see every building. So the way this is possible is we work with the City of Macon and Bibb County. They have a lot of data locked in their offices, and they don't know how to put it on the web, how to share it with the world. They don't even know this is a possibility. So we met with them, and I said, look, you have all the buildings in the county. We could really use that on our web maps, right? Because I mean, in Google Maps, you'll see that in a big city like Atlanta. You won't see it here. So we've put these buildings into an open wiki map called OpenStreetMap. So we have the buildings. In other parts, we have the bus stops. Scroll around. But anyhow, when you click on one of these, you see it's, oh yeah, there's the bus stop. Yeah, and when you click on one of these, you see its individual history, and you can, each page has a download link here you can put into Google Earth. So the goal is, for this project, not just to show you, like, if you were looking up in your neighborhood, what is the government doing about this house, but also to encourage citizen action on it. Like, what if you search for your street and there are no cases, but you know that there's a house that's kind of a wreck? That means that it hasn't been reported and you should probably report it. Or what if you go here and you just want to show people about that data? And so you're all like in computer science, you could probably do some coding with it, but you have to start with open data. And that's why we're using this Google Earth KML standard, so that anyone can just download this data and bring it onto their own computer, see what they might be able to do with it. So sites like this, and also some other projects we did with buses, I'm putting onto a new open data website called maconmaps.com. So basically, I'm trying to do three things at once with this site, like explain to government, explain to citizens, and explain to programmers how you can make use of this data and the OpenStreetMap, where we put all these parks and buses and roads and buildings. And to make it as easy as possible, if you scroll down on this, there's one OpenStreetMap source, and then several different companies that build their own map styles off of it. So here you can see 4 map styles of the same place. They all look a little different in terms of detail that they show at different zooms. Maybe you have a lot of colorful data and you just want a black and white background like the Stamen toner one that I have selected. And then, hopefully you can see this as well. Then if you want to put it into Google Maps, the county uses a lot of Esri Flex maps. So there's what I think is the right XML to do that. And then there are some other libraries in there that explains how to do it. So hopefully, if you end up doing web programming, or in government they're doing some web programming, you just select one of these map styles and one of these mapping libraries you're using, and you can make use of the same data that we've been using in our maps. So these are all kind of serious projects. So what ended up happening was, we're not just all serious government data all the time. So a fellow from Santa Cruz, someone from Chicago, someone from New Orleans, and myself all collaborated on this project called Blocky. And I haven't shown it in Macon before because until recently, your Google Street View was from 2007. Had you seen the old Street View, of College Hill and everything? You would look at Ingleside Pizza and it would be all, whatever was there before, all boarded up. You would look at the lofts and CCJ and you'd see just parking lots. Well, just in the past few weeks, Google updated Street View to March or May of this year. So now y'all are ready to see this. All right, so you go to the site blocky.org and you can add your own photo, or what I'm going to do is go into Street View. Let's see where I am. Okay, go down for a little bit. It's a little unexpected. Oh, there it is. So you can see the CCJ was still being constructed at this time, but it looks pretty good. So you travel around the Street View. And let's say I choose this neighborhood. So then I'm going to click capture, and it's captured that as an image. And at this point, it looks like they hadn't added a whole lot in the front of the building. So in this little toolbox, you have some different things you can drop in there, little glittery things. So if you said, oh, you know what this needs is a trash can and some free Wi-Fi for everyone, and place to sit. There are actually some really good ones in here. So what was kind of interesting about this project was it launched in the beginning of this month, and so one of the people who was at our conference went and created one of these for his own neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina. And what he did was he found that we've got a crosswalk here somewhere. Let's skip ahead to the crosswalk. So this is a painter. So you wouldn't need a painter. So let me put a solar powered street light here. But a painter would be if you go to if you see a neighborhood but it needs to be repainted or something. Let me see if I can find the crosswalk guy. Oh yeah, here's the crosswalk guy. You already have a crosswalk here, but I'm going to put the crosswalk guy in there. So anyway, what happened with this was there were no crosswalks in this guy's neighborhood, and so he created a blocky of his neighborhood, put the crossing guard in there, and linked to it in C-Click Fix, which is the government's, the city's reporting system. So usually you go there and say there's a pothole here or something. What they actually did was they drew what they wanted to see in Blocky over their Street View and said, I want to see a crosswalk here. And I don't know if they knew somebody at the city or what, but a couple weeks later, the city replied that they had done a work order to paint those crosswalks onto the street. They were actually going to go in and do it. Something that they created in this whole glittery toolbox thing. Does that seem like a good way to describe it, a glittery toolbox thing? I don't really know how to describe it, but basically, anywhere there's Street View, someone did a really good one. because I think actually the White House has indoor street view. Let me grab that. So this place, for example. Hold on, let's try that again. All right. So this looks kind of empty. All right. So you could just, you know, do well in the White House. Statue like this. Oh. Not a bike rack. Not a crossing guard. Where are those flowers? No. Just like flowers. So anyway, yeah, you can put together like your picture of a neighborhood and then the share button. Let's see, you put it on Twitter, Facebook, or Tumblr. And I'm not really good at like coming up with them, but there are a lot of really good ones. Hopefully the official Tumblr is back online. Not yet. But there have been a lot of good ones, including that one in North Carolina where they actually put a crosswalk into real life. So I thought that was pretty cool. I've shown this to Main Street Macon and College Hill in case they want to talk about what they're doing. So let me go back to a little bit more technical things, open source things. So this here, so when I was here in September, College Hill wanted to show something that they could use open data to talk about what College Hill Alliance has done here over the past few years. So I collected all the code enforcement cases, all those housing violations from that website before, and made a timeline map just for College Hill. But what became really clear there was that other people wanted to see that for their neighborhood. And I couldn't make one for everybody's neighborhood. So instead, I decided to make this brand new kind of concept. I'm right now calling it Geodata Checkout. And the idea is you select an area. So see, this is a movable polygon here. You can just add points by clicking in the middle of one of these. So let's say I'm wanting to know, like, since 1997, what were all the code enforcement cases in that neighborhood? Now that's just one I just came up with on the fly. And if you were trying to do this with a standard database, I'm not really sure how it would react to this kind of question. But have any of you heard of this concept, this NoSQL concept? I think Stephen probably. Maybe. Okay. So the idea with NoSQL is that not everything belongs in a table. Not everything belongs in like a Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. Something like geographic data, for example, like all these cases, they have a latitude and longitude. I'm trying to search by this crazy shape. And fortunately, there's something called MongoDB, which just was designed for this. So I didn't even have to do a whole lot of work. I just put this little drawing tool in there. And so you can do that and click View Web Map. And it makes that question out to the server and just automatically comes up with a timeline like this. So back in 97 to 2000, I think they had a lot of cases that they looked into, and then it just kind of should just drop out at some point. But yeah, the locations are rounded a little bit. I don't want, if something happened in your house in 1999, for it to be held against you like 15 years later. But the reason it starts in 1997 is that's when the city started tracking this, and they haven't changed the software since. So it's terrifying software. You know, anything that the city got when I was in second grade, I'm a little bit suspicious of. So, but we were able to get the data out, and now it's mapped. And this is something that the city government could not possibly have done before we showed up, and now it's available to any citizen. So that's kind of like my whole thing there, is that we were actually able to change what was possible and at the same time make it open for everyone. So also, like I said before about open data, you can download this to Google Earth from that link, or as the GeoJSON that I'm using to draw this. So Google Earth KML, it'll actually automatically open a timeline for you in Google Earth, so you can see it in Google Earth instead of on this. And GeoJSON just would be easy if you wanted to do another web app kind of thing. And so I showed this to Historic Macon. Have any of you gone to like a Historic Macon project or event or something? So I showed it to him and he said, oh, can you do a timeline of all the buildings that, like as they were built in Macon? I said, well, I don't have that data. But fortunately, Historic Macon actually has a spreadsheet for their sector. And it's all open source. All the components are open and designed to connect to each other. So really making this, once I had that other map, making this Historic Macon timeline really took under 3 hours to put together, just to get all the data, run it through something that mapped all the addresses, and then change it around a little bit so that the markers would show up differently. So right now it's at 1899. There's only 3 houses that have been built in the neighborhood at that point, at least according to his records. So what I'm trying to remember when it is. There's some of them here. It's really cool because you'll see them start building houses up a street. Because this is year by year. Down here? Or like what area is this? This is so this is northwest of us. This is like along Vineville and Ingleside. So it's like any map. It's zoomable and panable and control the timeline like that.
And this is what Roger's project?
Yeah. So
he has the data on when houses were built.
At least for this one area, but this is a large area. If you like, if I move it up to 2009, I mean this is a good number of houses that are in the system. And so I have it in the same thing. So if you had this data for more houses, or if you drew a neighborhood around a smaller area, you would just get that one area. But for this example, I think it made the most sense to have all of them come in the same example. So I'm not really sure if some of them seem like they're a little bit, but yeah. And then any one of them you can hover over it and see it. So I mean, so there are a lot of libraries out there that make this a lot easier. Like, I remember when College Hill said, oh, we don't want such and such map that we were talking about, we want a timeline map. And timelines are just really annoying. But then there was an example online. It was just like, oh wow, I'll just like copy this example because it's open source and put my own data into it, and then there are errors first and tweak it a little bit, and then I got these buttons in there, and I just all I can say is that if you find a project that's open source, try to like keep it in mind in case like you find other components you want to put together to create one of your own projects.
So Nick, if we wanted to do a timeline map,
yes,
where would we start?
So let me show you where I. So this is based on. I should give credit where credit's due. It's based on something from Mapbox. It's actually based on this exact example. Now it looks very different here. You can see why I changed it. But they had an example where they mapped all the earthquakes that were on record. I don't know how they have earthquakes on record from the 1700s, but it would be interesting to know how they did that. So I took that and modified it, and now it's a Code for America project. So on GitHub, I'd encourage you, even if you don't have any code just yet, just to have a GitHub account, just so you can be in the loop on it. And even without an account, you can browse it. So we have an organization account, github.com/Code4America. And for this, let me see. Wow, I don't even. Alright. So let's see, this is, when did I update this? I updated it 8 days ago and it's already, I updated it 8 days ago and it's already like here, and all these other things have been changed in the past 8 days. So, you know, a lot of work, you know, as we're getting close to the end of the year. So here, like in the README, if you have GitHub, always add a README. Makes it so that people understand what exactly is going on. So I explain it, you draw a polygon, you get a map, you can download to Google Earth. So this is MongoDB, makes this possible. You just send it the polygon, and then I install instructions like this. So even if it's difficult to install on your own computer, there have been a lot of projects actually where I've just not known how to install on my own computer because one because it's a Mac and I don't know how the Mac works really. But fortunately, if you just send it to Heroku, they install it on their computer. And so oftentimes, I know this is a terrible practice like in the real world, but oftentimes I'll make a change, and instead of trying to figure out how to run it on my own computer, every time I make a change, I'll just put it up on Heroku. Heroku is kind of a cloud service, so it accepts tons of languages. Ruby, the one I'm using here is in JavaScript, Python, there are tons of languages that it accepts, and as long as you keep it under, like, basically, if you're doing it for a personal project, it will be free forever. If you have like gigabytes worth of data, then that's another story. But I'm not really sure what their pricing model is, but basically, if you are a company, then you would have to pay them. But if you're not a company, then it really is easy. And in fact, if you know how to put things on GitHub, so let me explain that. So GitHub is like a code library, and in the command line, you can just push things onto GitHub, and it'll just put your changes up there. And Heroku, you just push it to Heroku in the same way. It's almost as if you're putting it on GitHub, but instead of putting it into a code library, it puts it into actual use. That's kind of a really convoluted way to explain it, but basically, if you have a server, you want to run it, you don't want it to be on your own computer, because it needs to be around 24/7, it needs to be online, then you can just put it on Heroku essentially for free. I mean, I have like dozens of apps on there, and I don't think they've ever charged me anything. We're trying to move things onto the city servers, so that won't be a problem for the city. But you have to understand, the city is thinking that this would be like thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Like in one of these services, there was a database service where it was completely free for everyone. And they said, okay, for the top 0.5% of users who have like tens of thousands of requests every day, we're going to charge $5 a month. It was outrage. Everyone's like, $5 a month, we can't take that. I thought this would be free forever. Like, I don't know how that's a business model, be free forever, but they're putting it together. And $5 a month, believe it or not, is also a very lucrative business model. And the city, of course, would not understand. I went to them and said, okay, we got this, but it's going to cost $5 a month. Like, that's a rounding error for the city. I don't know whether that really is true. The city does try to audit all their money, but $5 a month, they definitely were interested in that.
Nick, on a lot of the early examples, like home status or whatever, they all were at a Heroku app.
Yeah, HerokuApp.com. Yeah. So
was that like a mirror, or is there a real homestatus.org?
Yeah, if I go to homestatus.org, I'm sure you can set it up that the domain name shows up in the URL bar, but for now I just have it do a redirect to the Heroku server. We're eventually going to move this onto the city's servers, just because they want to know if they're. I think they just feel more confident having their own servers because their servers are in a nuclear bunker. So I mean, they feel like that's just the best way to do it.
Is that why I can't find any of this? Or am I just mistyping something? Because I can't find anything that you have on.
Can you get to homestatus.org like that?
This computer's running really slow.
And then making maps is makingmaps.com. They should all be online. I mean, there was something the other day where Amazon went down for a little bit, and a lot of sites that use Reddit stopped working. That's kind of like our greatest fear is when Amazon goes down. You know, a lot of sites just stop working around the web. So maybe the city has a point, you know, having their nuclear bunker of servers. But, so yeah, basically to tie it back together, we've done some cool projects with Historic Macon, College Hill Alliance, and Habitat for Humanity as well. And then the government has contributed a lot of this data. And it's really, like once we have it in that OpenStreetMap project, once we have it in that OpenStreetMap project, a ton of people start making maps from it. And so like you see buildings and parks, and we kept it up to date. We in this map have the most up-to-date, most accurate, most detailed map of Macon that I believe has ever been created. It takes the best of what the county and the city and all these other organizations have, updated everything, and then made it free and available online. So, and also the reason we have that maconmaps.com site, which I'll try to polish off a little bit and send to the computer science department, is that really the maps can be used by anyone. They're free, and they can be a really good background for your data if you want to show something in Macon. You don't want to have that like blank Google Maps look. Because I mean, a lot of sites use Google Maps now. Now, like it interests people when they see a map that's a little bit different. But you know, we still have the accuracy. We're not talking Apple Maps here. Different. We're talking
usable.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
Do you have a brigade in town that you're working with?
We haven't really. Yeah, so Hawaii was able to get that kind of brigade thing going. They've even selected a brigade captain. It's interesting the kind of language that they use around this, like brigade captain and hackathons and things. But really all that needs to happen is that, I mean, if you're interested in open source, you can make use of our code for your own purposes or for the city. And I mean, the city is actually really interested in how this all turned out. And you know, I know the city and county are combining. It's really complicated. No one wants to really think about that. But they're really interested in bringing this kind of technology into the ways they fight blight and into how they run their computers in the city. And they actually have some funding for it now. So they were trying to convince Jessica and I. Jessica designed all these sites and bus map created. We've already told people about bus map. If you want to see it. It is cool, but I mean, it's out there on the Macon Bus site if you want to see it. Or I probably should just bring it up here. But yeah, so they were trying to hire us up, and I think really what they really should do is try to hire some of y'all, or at least like bring in a project that's like real life and try to see what people who are actually here, you know, year round can do with it. Because you know, we weren't there all the time. You know, when we showed up this week, they had some questions. They wanted things changed. And that's I think if you can do something about it, that's what the brigade is really about. Is like making it more sustainable. So here's our bus map. And if you put the mouse over any one of these stops, you'll see the next times the buses can go by there. And this actually comes from the buses have a GPS tracker, and so we've got a week's worth of data and just kind of like wrote a script to kind of follow them around and see when they go to each stop. And the data for that, let me go back to that makinmaps.com. I'm going to put it on makinmaps.com, like a list of our data sets. And, okay, there's buses. And for the buses, like everything that we had, the stops, the routes, and each one of these you would get the actual GPS tracking. They gave it to us in this really convoluted format, but we formatted it as Google Earth KML. So if you download that and open it in Google Earth, it'll show like a little timeline of the buses going around. What we found out from doing this is the buses had actually changed their routes from the official site. There are some neighborhoods they don't go into anymore for various reasons. But anyway, so we actually were able to update our map based on this data and give everyone who gave us data back more information that they didn't previously have. So in terms of like citizen involvement, because I know we were talking about that with Honolulu Answers, the citizen involvement right now is just being able to understand government better. When I visited Habitat for Humanity, they were really excited to see that we could show what had changed in their neighborhood, that we could show what code enforcement was doing. Like, he told me this crazy story that people will just demolish houses without approval. There was a house in his neighborhood that they just hired 2 people to jump on the roof and managed to break the walls and bring it down. And they never had a permit for that. So that like sounds like a sure way. Like, because what are you trying to do? You're hoping the house collapses. That does not sound like a very safe job description. But yeah, we're hopeful that these groups will, continue putting pressure on the city to keep this up. And I mean, the city's really excited about what we've been able to do. So,
who are the people in the city we should talk to if we want to get data and work?
All right. So, like, our main city contact is Amanda Deaton. I can send you some emails later. And then the technical guy is Terry Hacker. I'll ask for permission because he's really bogged down with a lot of IT stuff. But I guess both of them are talking about leaving the city. So it's interesting, kind of like, throughout the year working with them, and then we're like, oh, now we leave it with you, and they're like, well, make sure somebody else knows about this because.
And the big merger with the city and the county, they're going to, I guess, put their data centers together.
Yeah, they're still trying to figure that one out. It sounds like they're hiring a consultant to decide how they're going to do that. Just because, the city and county have their separate ways and they need to find a third party which disagrees with both of them or something. So kind of a touchy spot for them, but they are trying to put them together. I mean, a lot of the technology services right now are up at the county level. We've had our own issues with the county. Okay, yeah. Sorry for keeping you, but thanks for showing up and seeing these projects. Yeah, I hope.
A lot of really cool work you've done.
I hope that some of this you'll be able to check out. They'll be free to hear about it again from someone, one of these neighborhood groups.
Think how long you've been down?